All right. Hello and welcome once again to White Lotus of Light conversational series. And I am thrilled to have Tom Siebert back here for part two. This is one of those episodes, a lot of episodes on this channel, you can just watch part two and it's fine. But I'm going to put a card up there for part one. I think part one is, unless you're very familiar with Revelation of the Method, you really ought to watch part one. In fact, a lot of people have a misunderstanding, in my estimation, of one of the key components of Revelation of the Method, namely the magical occult amplification. Go watch part one. Like, pretty much, like, go ahead and just hit stop and go watch part one. I really think it's one that you need to watch first. And Tom is, among many things, he's a film critic, but he also considers himself a de-occultist. And we're talking here about Revelation of the Method here in part two. And Tom is going to launch into some concrete examples with one of both of our favorite, kind of weird, janky, yet somehow excellent director, John Carpenter. And so, Tom, do you want to launch into some Revelation of the Method examples with John Carpenter? I mean, he is kind of janky, right? I love John Carpenter, don't get me wrong, love him. But him always doing his own soundtrack, pretty amazing, or at least in most of his films, in there with the keyboard and clearly hunting in packs.
Yes. Yes. The only thing I say is, like you said, Tom will have some concrete examples. I mean, I don't know how many people are going to find them concrete. I think you'll find them oddly coincidental, let us say. Okay. I do think there are a few filmmakers who seem to be ahead of the curve, let's say, more than John Carpenter. I think you can find them scattered through all of his films. I mean, I always like to point to Prince of Darkness as one that I think kind of sets an umbrella over what it is that's being done both by Carpenter and other creative artists, where one of the underlying messages in Prince of Darkness is the characters in that film are being visited in dreams from people from the future, trying to give them a premonition of this supernatural horror that is going to, take over Earth or try to take over the Earth. And I would tend to think that filmmakers actually are doing that. And in the same way that Orson Welles called film a ribbon of dreams, I think film in some way is almost the material transportation of dreams into our reality, which makes them such a great place for predictive programming. If you look to Carpenter's Escape from New York and Escape from LA, its sequel, both those films are oddly filled with what appears to be a precognitive understanding of what's going to happen in those cities or that world. In Escape from New York, a plane crashes into a building, but as we see it depicted digitally by the people in the federalized police department who are watching it, we just get two screens. So it looks like there's two planes hitting two separate buildings instead of just the one building. So that takes place in Escape from New York. Certainly, Escape from New York might be a good piece of advice for anyone who's living in New York City now, in the same way that maybe you could say an Escape from New York.
And Escape from LA.
Yes, exactly. Two cities to get the hell out of people. Yeah. And in Escape from LA, in order to guarantee that the anti-hero Snake Plissken gets back to them in 24 hours, he's infected with a virus. They give him a super flu that is going to kill him in 24 hours if he doesn't get back. But then when he gets back in time, they don't even need to give him the antidote because it was all a joke. It was a fake flu. It was a fake virus. Yeah, wow. So that was, isn't that kind of interesting? And Escape from LA ends with them shutting down the power grid. So, if you're looking for your next, perhaps, predictive programming event from a John Carpenter movie, we may get that at the climax of Escape from LA.
I need to watch those again because I loved Escape from New York when I watched it.
Oh, yeah.
It was one of those movies like gosh, why am I can't Mad Max Road Warrior, right? The second Mad
Yes.
Max film, which are just they're timeless classics. It's a little bit dark, and what I mean is not the tone. My one complaint about Escape from New York is it's just way too physically dark, meaning like you can't really see some of the action as well
Yes,
as
that's right.
like it does set the tone of the movie. But anyways, we don't need to go down that.
Well, the whole movie takes place at night. I mean,
Yeah,
that's it. Like
yeah,
there are no day scenes in
yeah.
Escape from New
Awesome.
York.
It's so awesome.
Yes, yes. Um, so those are like two big ones, or sorry, three big ones if you count Prince of Darkness. I think we're going to, or you're going to mention They Live in a bit, so we'll stay off of that one.
Uh-huh.
I will note that like his last couple movies, the last successful one was called Mouth of Madness, which was very
Yes.
H.P. Lovecraft like,
Ooh, I'm getting
and
chills. God, that movie is
it
creepy.
was creepy. It
Oh
was
my
creepy,
God, it was really
but
good with Sam Neill.
yes, exactly. But it's kind of like what we're seeing now. Like in that movie, the what's reality and surreality become intermeshed so tightly that people can't tell what's really going on.
Yep.
Like that's it. Like the whole world goes mad because reality and surreality become intertwined so closely, and that's kind of what we're seeing now. And
It's
even
interesting, and
yeah,
I'm going to spoil something in that movie that it doesn't matter because it kind of like it's something very near the end that doesn't impact the plot. That movie, you have to be able to handle horror movies. I don't think I would watch that movie again now. I used to kind of like be interested in horror movies when I was a teenager. I can't watch it now; it's too dark for me. That movie is superb, though, in my opinion. And at the very end of it, it's funny because this will come out afterwards. So hopefully, we aren't in the midst of a zombie apocalypse and this does go up. But at the end of it, people are taken over by some kind of mind virus
yes,
that comes from I'm not I don't want to spoil that, but there's a mind virus that starts to take people over and people start becoming hyper violent, and there's this whole thing that's going around the internet. I suspect it's BS, but I'm just going to go ahead and maybe take precautions. Some people say it's a loose harvesting psyops, but there's this whole idea that the coming in 2 days. We're filming this here on the 2nd. This video won't be out until afterwards. Hopefully, not for survivors of the zombie apocalypse to watch if they even have the internet. But yeah, there's this whole rumor that whether they do it now or later, that they're testing the system or launching a thing that will turn people who took and we won't use the V word, took the injection, right? Will cause them
Brewer says.
Yeah, it'll cause them to be completely taken over. There clearly is some kind of mental mind virusy a component to that. But kind of interesting, like to see if that's maybe some kind of revelation of the method, even if it's down the line. I don't think they would do it now, but just interesting. Speaking of things that come out, but you also mentioned or in conversation that, and again, horror movie, and this one is unbelievably disturbing, and there's no way I would watch it again because it's deeply scarred into my brain as it is, and that's The Thing. Fascinating, right? Because, well, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, well, the thing about The Thing is that it takes place in Antarctica, and so even if this sorry, if you don't know the movie, The Thing is about this station of, I don't know, maybe a half dozen or 8 men at Antarctica, and they discovered a alien in the ice, and the alien can duplicate them, and then it becomes sort of like a pick off the guys at camp one by one movie. So I mean, straight out of the gate, something's going on in Antarctica. We don't know what it is, but there's something funky going on down there, no doubt about it. So just the subtext to the film that there's something strange going on in Antarctica and they're not telling us. And then the other subtext would be you're basically in a society where everybody's being taken over one by one, be it by a mind virus or be it by an alien parasite, which is what the movie concerns. And you've got to hold on to your soul. I mean, you've got to hold on to yourself, in the face of all this stuff, be it just societal brainwashing or be it an actual mind virus from, some alien parasite. I don't know. but yeah, it's loaded with
Interesting because
predictive
the
programming.
X-Files movie, they have a similar, it looks very similar visually. In the thing, the Russians actually had found a frozen, gigantic alien-like mothership looking thing, and they had explored it a little bit. And isn't that in the thing they have that as well? That there's the giant frozen ship, and that like they got near that, and then the dog's running away. Okay. In X-Files, there's almost a visually identical gigantic ship, and that's where the black oil, which again is a kind of mind virus takeover thing.
Yes. Yes.
And X-Files, talk about revelation of the method.
Yeah.
X-Files, they brought back the series very briefly, and it was about a pandemic. What
Yes,
the actual beep? I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah.
And which brings me to my favorite three, or not favorite, but I think the three most important revelation of the method movies are They Live, which I'll let you talk about that a little bit here in a second, which is another John Carpenter film. V for Vendetta, which is written by a very plugged in, active practicing magician, Alan Moore, in England. He wrote that. He also wrote The Watchmen, which has some interesting stuff in it. Not quite the same, but and he and Grant Morrison, who I talk about sometimes on this channel, they had a big magical clash where they were doing magic against one another, and it was a bit of a Coke and Pepsi Cola Wars thing. It helped boost their comic.
Yes.
You had to be a real comic nerd in the 80s and 90s to know about this. I only know this retroactively because there's actually some really interesting articles about the occult war between Grant Morrison and Alan Moore, who are both practicing magicians. Anyways, Alan Moore wrote in V for Vendetta, what's the plot line? The government releases a virus, and they use that as a pretext to create a totalitarian police state. They did it. He couched it in terms of that it would be a theocratic, reactionary, old school 1930s fascist type movement that would be fake Christian in nature. But boy, is the whole thing where and guess what it's set in? Not the comic, but the film when they made V for Vendetta. You know what year it's set in? 2020.
Oh, is it really?
It is. Incredible. Talk about revelation of the method. And then the third one that I think is the most important.
But just before you go on, I will say that V for Vendetta was produced by the Wachowskis, who also made The Matrix.
Interesting. Yeah, and they're now trans. Yeah, right. The whole cybernetic mystery zombies. I noticed during the pandemic, you got to watch part one again. A lot of what we're talking about won't make sense unless you watch part one. But the cybernetic mystery zombies that are mentioned in part one, and that's alluded to in the Matrix with the people being, the batteries for it. Around 2020, I noticed that they were starting to roll out transhumanist stuff. They had like a cover of some magazine where they had this model, and she had like robot legs. She was super hot, and she had like robot legs and like robot arms. And there was a few different things like that. And people were starting to go, what the hell? What is this? And then it disappeared. And instead, trans, as in transgenderism, suddenly was launched into orbit, whereas it had been a fairly peripheral thing, even in 2020, it was still kind of like off to the side. All of a sudden it was being, metaphorically, or in some cases, unfortunately, in some, women's prisons, literally shoved down our throats, this trans nightmare. And that's done in part for mind control reasons, right? They want to do population control. Obviously, that's a big goal. And these people are always so good at using a single stone to kill 3 or 4 birds.
Yes.
Especially when the Luciferians were still helping them, which they were in 2020. And now the Luciferians have sort of, in my opinion, cut the Malachians loose, and the Malachians are having to basically just try and copy previous things they've done without any originality. And that's why all their psyops are so cartoonish at this point, is because the Luciferians have withdrawn their support, but they still were in 2020. And so they want to do Depop, of course, but they also, when someone doesn't know who they are at a very core fundamental level, they have confusion about who they are. They're so ripe for mind control. They're so ripe for mind control. And that's a big part of what this trans thing is about. And again, I am not demonizing trans people. I have a family member who is trans, and I love them very much. I'm very saddened by the fact that they're sterilized now because they took the hormones. I also simply think that that family member was gay, but unfortunately they were gay and grew up in a time in which this trans thing was being pushed, and they were at a very liberal university, and they ended up getting sucked into that. And so I'm 100% believer in everyone should have equivalent human rights, equal access, equal protection. But I do not believe that people who have a penis should be able to share closed spaces with, vagina havers. And they also shouldn't be competing against them in sports. And that's where I draw the line. But that's not a denial of rights. That's just a common sense. And
I'd just like to offer one thing on this, because like I hadn't met a ton of trans people in my life because there aren't a ton of trans people. But like my experience until like the past couple of years with any trans person was that they were like extremely gentle, fragile. Like I generally wanted to treat them with kid gloves and mercy. Like there was a trans woman who went to my church in San Diego, and she was just like the most gentle, fragile, considerate, like trying to seek God person, So like I have a great deal of empathy for people like this. There's this weird new, like super aggressive, kind of violent, like we want to take over your culture trans thing that appeared in just what seems to be the past couple of years, and that is the thing that I find dangerous, like that's weird. That wasn't my experience with trans people until the most recent couple of years.
I agree. I even knew someone who full-blown transitioned. It was a trans woman who got breast implants and was taking hormones and all that. And my experience of them was that they were a pretty traumatized individual who was generally very kind and was just very confused. Right. That was the main feeling I got, was that they were confused and really trying to figure something out. And so I just want to say that that's not to demonize. That said, transgenderism does two things. Well, it does several things. So, right. Because again, they're so good at that multi-layered thing. One, yes. It creates inversion. So there's an occult element to it, the inversion thing, right? There's also the depopulation thing. There's also the making you ripe for mind control thing.
Yep.
But the other thing is that if you go and say transhumanism to someone, they're going to hear transgenderism and be very defensive. And they laid the groundwork for, you can't attack these people who are doing it. And what they're already saying, right, is that anyone who gets a brain chip, oh, don't you want blind people to be able to see? Don't you want crippled people to be able to walk? Why wouldn't you want to do this? Like, you're so evil for not why are you attacking the victim, right? And so they have already used that template, and it's confusing to people. Most people can't understand the difference. Regular normies can't understand the difference or won't hear the difference. And even if you explain it to them, they'll just be like, you're bigoted, right? They're not going to hear the difference between transgender and transhuman. Transhuman being cybernetic mystery zombie direction, right? So, Wachowski brothers, right? And the V for Vendetta, being a revelation of the method. I think that, They Live, which I want to tee that up for you to talk about. But if you take V for Vendetta, They Live, and then this one I'm about to talk to, it ties it all together. And that is Eyes Wide Shut, which was made by, the person that many people think they faked the moon landing with. I'm of the personal opinion they used Ultratech to go to the moon. I think they found artifacts up there on the dark side of the moon. That's my conspiracy theory about the moon. Not that we haven't been there, but that we lied about the tech that was used to go there. And you can go more into that with my interviews with Walter Bosley, or Dr. Joseph Farrell talks about this a lot. And so I'm not going to belabor the point on that. Doesn't matter, but
Stanley Kubrick, though.
Thank you.
Stanley Kubrick.
I was casting about for his name. Stanley Kubrick, who also did Another revelation of the method, Clockwork Orange, which I don't know
Clockwork
that I
Orange.
watched it again, but my
Pardon?
God, is that a good film?
It is.
Yeah.
Undeniable. I hate it, but it is a
Yeah.
work of genius.
And 2001 Space Odyssey, incredible. Kubrick's one of the greatest directors of all time. I mean, he's on the real short list for me.
Oh, yes.
Real
Undeniable.
short list.
Undeniable.
There's like Orson Welles and there's him, and I'd have to think, a few
Hitchcock,
yeah, right.
Scorsese.
Yeah.
I mean, half dozen guys, maybe.
Right. He's on that
Ed Wood.
ultra. Oh my God. He's on the ultra short.
Jar Jar Abrams.
All right.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, just kidding. Eyes Wide Shut, though, by Stanley Kubrick, he really revealed it all. And I don't know whether he was a Luciferian, which is my guess, and he was trying to release this information. I don't know what happened, but if you look it up, I can't find a link. I'll see if I can find the link. This would interest you, Tom, but he was killed he was killed, I want to say 911 days before 9/11.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
He died 911 days before 9/11. And he really blew the roof off that there's an occult sex blackmail angle to the elites.
Yes.
That, is very much about control and domination, but is also about sexuality. He didn't go too much into the magic. He just hints at the magical aspects of it. But these people use black tantra 100%, which is to say they use tantra, but they use it to manifest things with evil intent. And at the center of most mystery schools and secret societies, not all of them, but many of them, you will find either white or black tantra. Most people who, when they think about tantra, they're usually actually doing something more like gray tantra, where they're not really with a defined goal or whatever kind of thing. And that's actually super harmful for the people involved. Of course, black tantra, much, much worse. White tantra is using the sexual creative energy of the universe to actually raise your own individual consciousness, but also that of all of humanity. And that could be this beautiful, wonderful thing. And so some of the good mystery schools will use white tantra and have that at the center. Once you've shown your worthiness, they'll show that. And on the opposite side, in the Eyes Wide Shut side, black tantra is at the center of a lot of the occult workings they do when they're doing their actual magical rituals, not the one that they show to everyone else, like Sam Smith at the Grammys or the 2012 Olympic Games that I talked about in part 1, or any of that kind of stuff, or Madonna at the Eurovision or whatever, it was insane and very similar to the 2012 thing, and also pre-pandemic and showed a lot of the pandemic. Those are the amplifiers. But the anchor spell that they do that behind closed doors, and it's Eyes Wide Shut stuff. And I think that that's the single most important, in my opinion, that if you just didn't watch anything that we've talked about, you should watch some of them, maybe not the horror movies if that's not your thing, which it's not mine anymore. But
you got to watch Escape from New York. That's just a great movie.
Yeah, it's a
great movie.
Call me Snake. Yeah, you gotta watch it. It's peak Kurt Russell.
Yes, it is. His signature role.
Captain Ron. I'm just kidding, but I do love Captain Ron.
He's good in Captain Ron.
He's really funny. Snake Plissken, one of my all-time favorite anti-heroes, fantastic.
Yes, no doubt.
Escape from New York, badass, one of those best of the 80s kind of dystopian films. If in terms of understanding the deep core of it all, the thing that's good about Eyes Wide Shut is many of these revelation, the method things we're talking about are around specific events. Eyes Wide Shut shows you what the elites are up to.
That's true.
And that's why I have it at such a high level. And if you look, you'll see that Christine Lagarde, and then what was that guy's name? There was some other guy who was the head of the IMF before him. He had some French name. They got caught in some kind of Eyes Wide Shut thing where somehow the cops stumbled across it, and one of the cops somehow got it out to the press. And there was a whole big thing about it in the early 2000s. And so, and that's not even getting into the really dark stuff. The really dark stuff is the Epstein stuff, and we're just not even going to touch that. That's the straight worshiping of Moloch and opening that portal to the lower astral. The kind of magic Eyes Wide Shut shows you is not that, but where they're trying to influence events through these occult sexual orgies that the elites have, and how there's a blackmail and control element to it. And so that's to me like the ultimate revelation of the method. And I think they killed him for it. I don't think he voluntarily like died, although maybe he faked his death. I don't know. It's possible. I think they killed him. I think that he somehow got it through because he's Stanley fucking Kubrick. And that then when someone in power saw it who knew that this was way too close to home, I think they decided that they would turn him into a sacrifice as kind of a warning to other directors as well. I think about there's certain lines you don't cross or we will kill you. So
I think that's possible. I would offer two things. One is the ritual party that Tom Cruise ends up going to in the third act was actually filmed at a Rothschild mansion in the UK, which I figured you probably knew, but maybe you didn't. So that's actually one of the illustrious Rothschild mansions if you see the film. Right. And the second thing is, and I've written about this a long time ago, but it's a good story to pass on again. I've heard like 4 different times in my career, crossing like 10, 12 years, that the reason that they killed Stanley Kubrick was because not that he was giving away too much in the film, no revelation about it. It was because he was taking too long. Eyes Wide Shut is one of the longest shoots in Hollywood history, almost 2 years to shoot that film. And Kubrick was going back and reshooting and reshooting and reshooting. And both Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman had agreements in their contract that they could not do anything else until they finished Eyes Wide Shut. So Tom Cruise at that time was the #1 box office star in the world and been slated to be in Mission Impossible 2 next, which was like a guaranteed, $500 million worldwide. Kubrick got back and like he still didn't have final cut. Like that movie was ready to be released because we saw it. But he was like, I'm still not happy with it. I got stuff I want to reshoot. It had been like a year and 11 months. So like when the studios heard that, they're like, all right, well, that's it. Then they killed Kubrick. So they could get Tom Cruise, Nicole Kidman back into the market. They had a low budget film lined up to him that he shot right away called Magnolia from P.T. Anderson, got an Oscar nomination for that. Then he did, right after that, Mission Impossible 2. So that's it. And then he's back on the wagon, a movie or two a year. But if you go back and you look at IMDb for Tom Cruise, there's a 3-year gap between the film he made in 96, which I believe was Jerry Maguire, and then 1999, Eyes Wide Shut. There is no gap like that anywhere in Tom Cruise's career. That guy was printing money. And so that was the story that I always heard from people in Hollywood, people associated with the film business in Baltimore. And then since you mentioned your pot dealer, when the first part of this interview, I'll mention that I heard it from a guy in the witness protection program who bought pot from the same guy I bought pot from when I lived in Big Island, Hawaii. So I've heard that story 4 times.
That's as credible a source as we can get.
Well, if it was the first guy, I probably wouldn't have bought it, but he was the 4th guy who told me that. So at that point, I was like, all right, well, there might be something to this,
That's interesting. I mean, that's interesting. I tend to think that the people at the very high, I mean, it could have been he was killed by a mid-level, a capo in the Malachian mafia or whatever.
The king of Hollywood, whoever that might be at the time, they're the one who gets to make that call. But the king of Hollywood reports into somebody else, But they might be able to make that call on their own. I don't know.
That's interesting. It seems, I mean, it could be. Certainly, they decided to turn it into a ritual thing because it's a 911 days for 9/11. That's just wild.
I'm betting it's actually, because I know it is an esoteric date. I'm guessing it's 666 days because the film came out in the summer of 99, and then 9/11 was September.
But didn't he die before it came out?
Yeah, what I mean. So the movie.
I see.
Oh yeah. So it still wouldn't be, because 999 days. We're pushing 3 years.
911 is about 2 3/4 years.
Oh, then maybe then.
It was either 911. It might be 666. It's definitely like some kind of numerology thing.
It is though. Yes.
It's a bit like what it's
exactly
like the odds start getting. That the odds get to the point to where the odds are like clearly this has to be some kind of conspiratorial thing, because the odds of that happening just on a pure statistics basis, random distribution, are 0.
Yeah.
So it might have been 666. I'm not sure. Regardless, it's fascinating. So we're going to need to wrap up here, but I would love to have you on again and go into this stuff more, and we can do other things you're discovering. But I want to finish with, you believe that you have identified, and I agree with you on at least that this is definitely their desire.
Right, their desire.
Where they're trying to take things based on some revelation of the method. I will note that all of the films you're about to mention are utter hot garbage, and that makes me think that it's a Malachian thing that's not going to work.
I would agree.
If it's all sophisticated, like Eyes Wide Shut, or even V for Vendetta, or the Matrix movies, or any of the other things, another movie people might want to watch, or at least watch the key segment, is My Dinner with Andre, and they have a conversation about invisible concentration camps. That sure sounds like smart cities. But tell us your theory about what the Malachian Democratic National Committee is up to with hit it.
Right. Well, I think they're trying to conjure a black female president, and I think we have Kamala, or Big Michelle Obama. We have 3 examples of a black woman king brought to the fore in big Hollywood productions in the past 2 years. You had The Literal Woman King, which starred Viola Davis as a badass female warrior, which actually, it's not a bad film. It's a fantasy. It's got nothing to do with the way history worked, but that's actually not a bad action film. And I would also point out that same year that Viola Davis played the Woman King, she also played Michelle Obama in the Showtime miniseries The First Ladies. So that's an interesting piece of dual casting. Additionally, in 2 Marvel movies, we had black woman kings. The most obvious one was the death of T'Challa in Black Panther, where his sister takes over and becomes the Black Panther, and in turn, the woman king of Wakanda. And then in the Marvel superhero movie Thor, the black goddess Valkyrie becomes the black woman king of where is it? Valhalla,
Asgard,
I guess.
Asgard.
Yes, thank you. So, and all those movies came out within a year of each other. And I'm a big fan of the rule of 3, and so are people who practice witchcraft. And so it seems to me that this has been a Hollywood conjuring of an attempt to bring to the United States a black female woman king, e.g., president.
But consider, I think you're right on the money. The Viola Davis thing, where she also is Michelle Obama, to me is like one of the definite markers here. I just want to point out 2 things. One, the original woman, who was an African actress, I can't remember her name, who was originally the Woman King for a period of time in the shoot, she backed out of it when she found out that particular tribe was actually doing slavery until they were forcibly stopped by either the French or the British, which is just a little bit in contradiction to the woke.
Yeah, that was weird. It was like, yeah.
I don't think that was an accident, because it's an inversion thing, right?
Yes.
And then look at the title. The title makes no fucking sense. Woman King. It's called a queen. Now, admittedly, a queen, like you'd have to say the queen of whatever, right? Like it doesn't make a good title, but I would argue Woman King makes no sense. It's like Megan the Stallion. Aren't you Megan the Mare? Are you saying you have a dick? What? Doesn't make any sense, right? But inversion, and Joan Rivers, she had deep networks into gossip. She was like the gossip queen in the entire country. And a couple of weeks before she died, she was admittedly, had been there to witness King Tut's coronation, so she was no spring chicken. But the timing is odd. She said everyone knows that Michelle Obama is she used the, kind of offensive word, whatever, tranny. Yes. She said everyone knows that. Everyone knows that. Recently, what's his name? Is it Michael Hastings? I forget. Obama's gay lover has come out and once again has made the rounds, thanks to Tucker Carlson, almost certainly Luciferian, about how Obama's gay, which was, I heard that a ton back in the day. And I've seen some pretty interesting pictures of what sure looks like Michelle Obama with Barack. And I know that sometimes black women have short haircuts, but gosh, oh gosh, does that picture of them at the Golden Gate Bridge sure look like those are two men, two biological men. And, I think some people were hinting at this when they would talk about her shoulders and whatever. And I know there's some people say there's a racist element because some amount of black women are very like muscular, and so forth. It could be a lot of the stuff about Obama that was coming out at the time, like his family being in the CIA. I actually have sort of come around on that. Maybe he wasn't born in the US. I don't know. There's a lot of smoke there. I wonder, with the whole long form birth certificate thing was weird. But Joan Rivers said that Michelle Obama was actually a man, which makes a lot of sense. And those kids also look an awful lot like Obama friends.
Yes,
Malia and the other one look very much like a couple of friends that the Obamas had, as though those were their children. They look almost identical, and I've seen pictures of it. And when you bring it all together, now all of a sudden, the woman king makes sense. Because what would you call a trans woman who became the leader? You wouldn't say the queen, you might, but you might also say the woman king, right? And so I think you're on the money, because the two people that are most likely to take over for Biden, and they're waiting till the absolute last second to remove them, which is very tricky and complicated by RFK Jr., praise be to God, coming into the race. If it hadn't been for that, I'm sure they would have already done this, is they either want Gavin Newsom or Big Mike, Michelle Obama, to be the replacement. I don't think either one of them have the cachet. If they had a full period of time to run it out there, again, I see this dynamic of Luciferians and Malachians. I think the entry of RFK Jr. into the race spoiled this plan, because they would have liked to have already done it. I'm sure they would have liked to have done it by July or August of this year, which is right around, I think RFK Jr. announced before they started to get rid of Biden. They were already laying the groundwork to get rid of Biden. They were doing the freeze thaw thing you talk about with the Hunter Biden laptop, all that kind of stuff. They were getting ready. They were laying the groundwork to get rid of Biden, and it would be easy. Nobody likes Kamala Harris. It would have been a piece of cake to get rid of her. And then they wanted to have like their fait accompli Hillary Clinton style coronation of either Michelle Obama or Gavin Newsom. And I think that you're absolutely on the money, that those are a very hack Malachian version of Revelation of the Method. All three of those films are garbage. They're garbage and got very little viewership, right? So,
well, Black Panther made a ton of money.
Wait,
it was a crappy movie. Black Panther 2. Yeah, no, I bet I would have to look, but I think it made $1 billion.
Oh, okay. So maybe I'm not being fair to that specific film. That Black Panther 2 did get a lot of eyeballs in front of it. The other two were just atrocious flops, especially like this whole thing of like Hemdahl. I used to think it was nonsense, this whole idea of like race swapping being some kind of like attack on European descent people by the globalists. I used to think that was nonsense and was some kind of reactionary BS. But I don't think so anymore, because in particular, redheads have been replaced almost across the board. Of every kind of redhead that was originally the character was red hair has been replaced by some person of color. In Disney films, Ariel and the Little Mermaid, I know she had green skin initially, but Hemdahl. Hemdahl is written in the Norse mythology as the whitest of the white, the fairest of the fair, much like Snow White with Rachel Ziegler, right? Hemdahl is written as, even by Viking, for God's sake, Swedish standards, he was supposed to be the most fair-skinned of Swedish Norwegian people. Hemdahl. And Hemdahl was played, and I love this actor, it's not his fault, but was played by, oh my God, I'm blanking on him. Amazing black man. Oh my God.
Idris Elba is who always pops to my head.
Thank you.
Was that it? It was amazing. You can say amazing black man, and my response is Idris Elba, and you're like, bullseye.
Yeah. Well, Idris Elba is just amazing. I love him. There's a hilarious skit by on some British channel where Idris Elba is like getting like high on his own supply of ego and just thinks he can do anything and he's unstoppable. And he starts out like being a barista and taking over and just saying, I don't need any training. I can do it. I'm Idris fucking Elba. And then it gets increasingly insane where he's like working at an oncology lab and all this kind of stuff. He like, yeah, you could look up Idris Elba and like British comedy. It's freaking hilarious. It's by the same guys who did Black Jesus, which is also very funny. But yeah, I think you're totally on the money, and that there's definitely that's brewing, and that's an example of pre-programming and a pre-programmatic prediction that I will co-sign. I think that's likely. They may end up going to you know, Batman knockoff villain Gavin Newsom for you know, like that guy just looks like he crawled straight out of Gotham City. God, he's vile. I can't stand
Gaping Gavin, I call him. Gaping Gavin.
Gavin Newsom is the Trudeau of the US. Like he really is. He's so horrible. Oh God, I can't stand him. Like,
I don't think he's as stupid, which makes him more dangerous.
yeah, Gavin Newsom's nasty, and he's part of the Pelosi clan too. By marriage. So yeah, vile. But so I'm going to have you back, Tom, and we'll have to come up with some more examples so we can talk about this, especially anything emergent, any kind of predictive stuff that you're seeing trends, you know, just keep an eye out for that. Is there anything you wanted to say to people before we sign off? We got a little rambly there at the end, but
yeah. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I mean, if there's one movie that I think people should track down that's not easy to track down, even though it was a big Hollywood release, it's the 1982 film called Wrong is Right, starring Sean Connery and written and directed by the Oscar-winning Richard Brooks. And that movie is as loaded with predictive programming as any I'd seen. And it's just like a good like thriller too.
What's it again?
It's called Wrong is Right. And it's funny, it opens, you know, like with a voiceover of Sean Connery. And, you know, he just like says, like, yeah, I'm not going to try to imitate him because I could never do it. But it's like, you know, it was like a mysterious time when up is down and men and women and day is night and wrong is right, you know, and it like pretty much where we are now, you know, the inversion of everything. And that's just the beginning. That movie is loaded with so many things in 1982 that have come to pass since, like reality TV and terrorism, and just, you know, that's just the beginning. And you got good looking, beautiful movie stars and just an entertaining film. But what's going on beneath the entertaining film is pretty mind-blowing. And it's called Wrong is Right. There you go.
Well, Tom, you and I will have to hit this in a future episode, because I love each and every excuse to bust out my Connery. So
it's pretty good.
Right indeed. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you
so much. Thanks for coming today. And that
absolutely, my friend. I appreciate it.
If I have more time to think about it and plan what I'm going to say. But yeah, we'll have to talk about this again. It was a really fun conversation. It's nice to have a little bit something slightly, even though it did get dark, for this channel, it's still a little bit less gravity than some of the stuff I talk about. So that's nice. And it was probably a bit relieving for some of the viewers. Yeah. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it. And if you got,
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I did too. I had a great time. Thank you so much, Tom. And that's always nice. And so if you got this far, please hit like and subscribe, and hit the bell. And Tom, real quick before we sign off, I'm going to link all your stuff below in both parts. But where can people find your work?
I mean, mostly I'm just writing on Substack at the moment, and I do have a public Facebook page. You know, I've been thinking about doing a podcast for years. People keep telling me to do it. This was sort of maybe the training wheels. I mean, I just think a lot of people have asked me to do something like this, and you were the first person that I've said yes to. Because even though I don't agree with you on everything, I do know in my heart, like, you are speaking the truth. You know, you're not into this for the grift. You're not trying to get clicks. Like, you believe what you're saying. And your theory on the whole Malachian versus Luciferian thing is on the money, and it corrected my perception of it being a satanic Luciferian thing. But they're all Satanists. It's the Luciferians versus the Malachians. The Malachians are worse, and like that was such a leap for me. And so I owe you for that. So that's the other reason I'm here. You're great.
Thank you so much for that, brother. And yeah, everyone should check out Tom, especially if you're into films. He does he just I assume you're going to immediately get off and start watching movies or TV shows, because this guy reviews so much stuff. I'm friends with him on Facebook, and he reviews so much stuff, and I read some, and then sometimes I'm like, no, actually that sounds good. I don't want to spoil myself, because Tom's stuff is very rich with spoilers, and is best really read after you've watched whatever he's talking.
Yes, that's actually true.
But he's a fantastic critic. I love his writing. He has a very humorous style, even sometimes talking about the dark stuff, and he goes between just regular reviews and then de-occulting stuff, and it's well worth your time. Give him a sub on Substack, watch his or read his material, his reviews. It's great stuff. And so thank you.
I guess I say it's called A Wrinkle in Tom.
A Wrinkle in
Tom on
Substack. And I'll have it all linked below.
Oh, right. So okay, great.
Then just this will probably come out next week for you, Tom. So okay. Thank you so much.
If we make it past October 4th.
Yeah. If we make it past, and let it be Walking Dead zombies, not World War Z zombies. If
It's such a lame way to go out, frankly. I mean, that's like a really lousy apocalypse. I mean, we can do better. We can do better.
We can definitely do better. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, and you have a lovely day, viewers. And
yes.
See you next
time.
You
too. Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.